What's up, amigos? It's Chris Lewitt here. Episode 53 of the Prodigy Maker Show, Bad Tennis Lessons Show. I thought it'd be a funny show, and I thought fans of the show would appreciate discussion about what's a bad tennis lesson like and how do you avoid taking a bad tennis lesson or getting your kids stuck in bad tennis lessons. But guys, it's been a couple weeks. I'm trying to produce a show once or twice a month right now. We're on a pandemic schedule, and then we'll be trying to ramp up the show soon in terms of production and also technology, so stay tuned for that. But it's been busy time here in Vermont and down in New York. We're getting ready for our summer camp. I have a lot of players who are visiting in the next couple weeks, starting early. Camp starts June 21st, and we run for 6 weeks until the end of July. But I have players starting to visit May 31st, so the summer's going to start early for me. We'll have players here all of June, early June, from all over the country. Small groups, and then a little bit larger groups in the summer camp. But the summer camp large for us is maybe 30 players max. That's the max that I want to take because I want to get to know every player. I thought later in the show we might talk about what makes a bad camp, and that would be one of the factors, is how many players are in the camp and what is the ratio. So I try to keep our camp numbers fairly small so that I can get to know everyone, and every player is like a project that I'm taking charge of. I'm planning goals and the training for every player who comes. I think that's important. If the camp gets too big and I feel like I can't, it feels overwhelming to me if I have too many players coming to camp and I don't really know each player personally and I don't know what their goals are and I don't get to work with each player. It doesn't feel right to me. So that's a good way to run a high performance camp. Probably not the best way to make the maximum money, because the camps that are making bank are really loading up on players, hundreds of players. There are summer camps that do some serious business. So maybe I'm not the best business person, but at least I'm staying true to what I like to do, and that's train every player who comes here and spend personal time with every player who comes here. So that's a little different. The weather here in Vermont right now is unbelievable. Incredible weather. It's been last week was 60s and sunny. This week is 70s going up to 80 and sunny. It's incredible. It's paradise here. Everything's blooming, and you can go swimming in the lakes and rivers. I like to do cold swimming as an athlete, so I don't mind the chilly water. But I mean, it's incredible time to be in Vermont. I've never been up here. This is my first year staying here full time, and I haven't been up here that much in the spring. But everyone talks about the summer, but spring is just gorgeous. Anyway, guys, let's talk about bad tennis lessons, and I wanted to break up the show into a couple parts. I was thinking about how to structure the show, what I wanted to talk about, and a lot of the show I don't pre-plan. A lot of the show is extemporaneous and just my thoughts. I'm just riffing or rapping. It's like a jazz performance. But I do like to think about just basic things that spring to mind and get a basic outline for different shows. Some shows have a little more planning than others, but let's see where this show goes. I'm not sure where it's gonna end up, but I did want to talk about 10 and under, red, orange, green, and I know that's a common area of debate for tennis parents and tennis coaches and the tennis community. And there's just a lot of really bad tennis lessons in red, orange, green, and in 10 and under. Maybe that's the subject of an entire show, but let's drill down into it a little bit. So what I see with kids in 10 and under programs, oh my gosh. Okay, the first thing, if you take your kids to a program, you sign them up for tennis, right? They're young, like 4, 5, 6, whatever. I really don't like tennis lessons that do a bunch of basically gym skills, like things you would learn in PE class in school. And I know there's not enough PE in school, but I don't like paying for a tennis lesson. And let's say the lesson's 45 minutes and my kid is spending 20-25 minutes not even touching a racket, doing some ball skills, some tossing, any kind of, agility on the court. I don't want to say they're stupid, but they're kind of stupid little games that, those are things that should be done. Parents should do those things with their kids. That should be done in school PE. That should be done in other sports settings for young children, like the backyard or community recreational classes and things. If I want to pay for a tennis lesson, I want to bring my kid and I want them using a racket right away. So I think if you're looking for, the good and bad in young kids classes, 10 and under classes, sometimes they're called U10, and all the classes typically in the US now are red, orange, green. You want to see right off the bat that your kid is holding a racket, swinging the racket, and learning good technique. Tennis is a game of technique. I feel if the kid is spending a lot of time tossing the ball around, running some lines, doing some little stupid agility games, that's not a productive use of the tennis time. You can get a player better a lot faster, put the racket in their hand, tossing the ball. If you're going to use a red ball or an orange ball, okay. I mean, that's a separate debate, whether you think that's better or not, quote unquote better for junior development. But the kids should be hitting balls. And I think you get better when you hit balls. So, this could be extrapolated into other areas too. If you see, maybe we'll touch on it later, if you see a group class and the kids aren't hitting balls for 2 hours or 1 hour and a half, that's a problem. So holding the racket and hitting balls for the maximum amount of time, you can do it mathematically. How many swings is your kid getting? And are they being taught good form at a young age? And I think that is what makes a good lesson. If the kids aren't holding the racket and they're not swinging, by the way, if they're not swinging hard, I think young children should be taught to swing hard. Bad tennis lesson. Kids are just kind of swinging very softly, tapping the ball, not really developing their muscles, their muscular system. I think that's a big mistake. So that's a bad 10 and under red, orange, green lesson. And I see it all the time in different club settings, introductory lessons. And I feel over a couple years, what a lost opportunity for those children. They're doing some basic agility, hand-eye stuff, but they're not learning tennis. And their rate of tennis development is really slow because the lesson is truncated, the lesson is shortened. So I wish that if you sign up for a tennis lesson, or if you are a parent, or if you're a coach listening, put the racket in the kid's hand, toss them balls, rally with them, get them to swing as many times as you can within the allotted time frame. So you get as many swings in as you can, and that's how a kid's going to get better. They're not going to get better by tossing the ball back and forth, Johnny and Sarah tossing the ball and learn how to catch the ball. That's got to be done somewhere else. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be done, but it has to be done somewhere else. Okay, talking about young kids and 10 and under. Guys, if you're tuning in live, I see some people joining and leaving. Just let me know if you have any questions about bad tennis lessons or what makes a good tennis lesson, and I'll try to touch on that. But I'm just going to wrap here, or riff. I'm thinking about the 10 and under court. Okay, biggest thing, if you go to a tennis lesson, how do you know it's a bad lesson right away? There's no movement, there's no footwork, and the kids aren't breaking a sweat. The kids aren't, or adults, there's no physical, I don't want to say punishment, infliction. stress, pressure, movement, footwork, learning how to track the ball, move and get into position, recovery. It goes hand in hand with a physical workout, because whenever you work on footwork, it has to be physical. So right away you know it's a bad tennis lesson if it's not physical. If your kid or yourself, you're not moving, except for, very situational, very specific circumstances, like you need to just refine a movement and a stroke, so you do it stationary. But pretty much players should be learning how to move, because tennis is such a game of movement and footwork and balance and all that good stuff, posture and positioning. If you see a tennis lesson that doesn't have movement training, footwork technique, your kid's not learning how to coordinate their feet, or yourself. If I say kids, you guys know what I mean. It could be adult too. I work with kids most of the time. That's a bad tennis lesson. If your kids, as I said before, if the kids aren't learning to swing fast and really print some speed on the ball, within reason, not obviously not slapping at the ball, but you want the children to develop their core, their obliques, their abdominals, their shoulders, their arm, the muscles, the muscular system. You want that trained, right? So that's the biggest sign of a bad lesson for young children under 10. No movement, no footwork, no really hitting the ball, more just tapping the ball, hitting too smoothly. Smooth is okay, but smooth, there has to be, you should think like a physical trainer. The children should be developing their muscular system, muscles, and the neuromuscular system, and sending a quick signal to the muscles to fire with some explosiveness, obviously within reason for the child's age and size and physical development. But too often I see bad tennis lessons. The kids are standing around, they're not learning any footwork, they're not learning movement skills, they're not learning how to coordinate their feet. Very stationary type lessons. They're not physical lessons, so the kid's not getting any sort of cardiovascular workout. A young kid's tennis lesson should be cardiovascular, cardiopulmonary. It should have a cardiopulmonary effect. The kids should be breathing hard, should be working, should be sweating. Too often young children's lessons are not a workout. And so over time, the kid doesn't get in better shape. Every hour you have that lesson is an opportunity to get that kid into shape. That's how I see it. What else? In 10 and under, red, orange, green, bad tennis lesson. You see a kid who's physically strong or large for their age, good size for their age, playing with too soft a ball. And this connects to footwork. The soft ball is good for kids who have not a lot of ability, but the better kids, the most talented kids, can always play with the fast ball, a faster ball. So whether that's a orange or green ball for a very young child, or a yellow ball for a slightly older 10 and under child. I mean, most kids by 7 or 8, if they're talented, they can play with a yellow ball, in my experience. And I've been doing this a long time, junior development. So a bad tennis lesson is definitely holding a kid back, using a softer ball, a slower ball, which doesn't challenge the kid. Sometimes I joke that if they made a faster ball than yellow, I would maybe use that for young kids, because it would speed up their nervous system, it would speed up their reactions, and it would improve their footwork and movement. But I think the opposite is what you hear from most tennis coaches, most clubs. They will say they want the best for your child. They hold them back in red, orange, and wait enough for 6 months, or this or that. Meanwhile, The kids aren't learning how to move. They're not learning how to coordinate their feet. And usually with a softer ball, if they're stuck on a small court, I mean, the dimensions of the court matter too. If the court is too small for the kid's size and power, again, this goes back to the child is not going to be accelerating. The child is not going to be hitting the ball hard and using their muscular system the way you would like them to optimize their muscular development and neuromuscular development. So in other words, the court's too small, the kid's going to start tapping the ball, things like that. So, is that enough for 10 and under? Should we talk a little more about red, orange, green, or 10 and under? In my car here. My daughter is at gymnastics, so I'm trying to do this podcast remotely. And I apologize for any excess noise from the car here. If it's extraneous, if it's bothering you guys. Okay, so watch out for those pitfalls. If you're a parent, if you're a player yourself, I had a nice dude came and trained with me last week from Nantucket, and he was telling me about the lessons that he'd been taking as an adult. You know, he wants to get more serious about the game, and I helped him a lot with his technique. He visited the academy here in Vermont, and he's been spending a lot of money on lessons that I would classify as very bad tennis lessons. And he was telling me how he has sort of got locked into the typical club lesson. I'll tell you what the typical club lesson is so you can try to avoid it, whether you're a parent, whether you're a player, you're looking out for your kid. Typical club tennis lesson. I'm not the first to point this out, but it's bad. You show up, you warm up a little bit, you get good high quality repetitions, and that speeds up the motor learning. That allows the mind to learn. And so when you have a lesson that sort of jumps around, the coach shifts too much, shifts to lots of different... Hey guys. Hey, I'm sorry. We have I hope we didn't get disconnected there. So if the lesson shifts around too much, it's going to be really problematic, and the learning is going to be really slow for yourself, for your kid, and progress is going to be slowed down. It's a very bad tennis lesson. Another sign that you see a lot in the typical club lesson is the coach brings out that big 350 ball cart and starts doing drills with that thing. Usually it sets a very bad lesson, because yeah, you're hitting a lot of balls. I mean, it's not usually realistic. I'm not opposed to drilling, but you get that big cart, the coach is on the other side, usually feeding it with the racket. So there's a big distance between the coach and the player, disconnect. And you hit all those balls, right? And then there's like a 10-minute pickup where the coach, you know, I don't want to say a lot of coaches, you know, check their phone, check their messages or things like that. Or that's another one. If you're taking a lesson and your coach checks his phone during the lesson, unless it's an emergency or something, especially like in between the drills, like coach says, okay, we're gonna drain this 350 ball cart, and then I'm gonna take a 5-minute check my messages break while you pick up. That is a surefire bad lesson, and there's a lot of wasted time in that lesson. Basically, when you roll out that big cart, yeah, you're hitting a lot of balls, but then there's also the cleanup time, the pickup time, which takes 5 or 10 minutes, and then if you do that 2 or 3 times, the lesson's over. You lost, I don't know how much time, 10, 15, 20 minutes out of the full hour. I mean, you do the math. A lot of what a good tennis lesson is using as much of the 60 minutes to get better as possible. And bad coaches, they give a bad lesson is usually somehow squandering, in different ways, squandering the time that's allotted, whether it's an hour, 60 minutes, or hour and a half. So you got to watch out for this. Coaches who like the bad tennis lesson. Now I'm riffing a little bit, guys. This is good. Coaches who like to talk too much. Bad. Why? Because of the principle I said before. If a coach is talking all the time, the player's not doing good quality repetition. And I firmly believe that's what makes a kid better. You need to have reflection. So there has to be some talking, obviously. But you need to have a lot of good quality repetition. And unfortunately, some coaches, there's a certain type of coach that is always talking. And they just, whether they don't know it, but they're hindering their players' development because they like to talk. Whether they like to talk about everyday stuff, like just shooting the breeze, or whether they think they know a lot about technique or tactics and they want to like share every piece of knowledge that they have with the player. Usually coaches who take too much time during the lesson to talk are stifling, hindering, slowing down their players' development. And some of the best coaches I've worked with, they speak, but they don't speak too much. They find the important thing. They find the important things that need to be shared, and then they don't talk too much. Now, it can be more nuanced because some players maybe like to shoot the breeze a little more. Some players are a little more chatty. With some kids, with their personality, you got to talk to them a little more. But just in general, bad tennis lesson if the coach is talking a lot. Bad tennis lesson if the coach brings out that monster cart and starts feeding the balls. Usually bad tennis lesson. Bad tennis lesson if the coach checking the phone. Some coaches are like checking their stocks, doing their portfolio rebalancing while they're feeding balls. You know, I've seen it all. Run. Please don't send your kid to a guy who whips out his phone and start checking the phone during the lesson. Come on. You should know better, parents. You're paying pretty good money for that. Bad tennis lesson if there's too much pickup time. You know. This reminds me of an article that I wrote. Great article. Maybe I can attach it to this podcast and show about what makes a great tennis lesson. I wrote it for I believe it was USPTA magazine, Advantage, published a few years ago. It was really good. Talk about how to make your tennis lessons better. It was from a coaching perspective. This show is more about, you know, from a parent or if you're someone taking lessons, like a player. Funny. Bad tennis lessons, man. It's another bad tennis lesson. Usually, I got some good comments here too. Caroline says, "Hey Caroline, how are you? It's good to see you." This is my Caroline's boys. We're trying to get Caroline's boys to come live at the academy from Caroline. Are you from? Is it from Kenya or Kenya? I think I believe they're from Kenya, or is it Nigeria? I'm sorry, I forgot. But we're trying to get her boys over here, talented boys. But they're probably getting a lot of bad tennis lessons over there. Not from you, Caroline, but from other coaches who don't know better. Caroline's asking whether a yellow ball can cause injuries with smaller kids. And I think that is generally a myth. And especially, I can tell you from my experience, yellow ball, it doesn't cause injury. More likely to cause injury is using a very oversized racket, like a racket that's much too heavy. Not so much the length, because usually kids will kind of choke up on it a little bit. Probably, I would definitely shy away from using too heavy a racket. Yellow ball, I think, can almost never cause injury unless the coach is a complete idiot, or the parent doing the coaching, and they don't teach the kid how to move their feet and adjust to the ball. And if you're letting a kid hit a lot of balls way out of their strike zone above their head with a yellow ball, could potentially cause injury. But what good coach would let a kid do that? Good coaches are always demanding that the players move their feet and get into good position, and that can be with any colored ball. And that gets me back to one of the first initial points. What is a bad tennis lesson? No footwork and movement focus. That is a bad tennis lesson. What is a bad tennis lesson? The player's really smooth tapping the ball. Let's add on to that. What is a bad tennis lesson? Outdated technique. Coaches who are teaching the game from the 1960s and 70s and 80s, they're teaching that style to young children or to adults. I have some motivated adults who come to me, and what a shame. They spent the last 3 years paying for tennis lessons, and they've been taught strokes from 1975. Great job, coaches out there. Because adults cannot learn the modern game, apparently. That's not true. So, all of these things, guys, make a quick list. There's too many. I'm going to lose track here, but you get the idea. Some not all the time, okay? If you're okay, like it's always drill, it's probably a bad tennis lesson. I know that some coaches are not players and they need to drill with the basket. I like to use the basket or the bucket, the Spanish way. I like my buckets. But I think if it's only drills, it gets a little stale, and probably your kid's not progressing as fast as they could if it was more like a mix, like a healthy balance of hitting and drills in a lesson. Depends. It can depend on the situation. It can also depend on the player. Some players like to drill. They're not that. It's not that, but it's true. So in general, if the lesson is only drills and your coach can't hit, like he's not a good player, it's probably bad. On the side, if it's only hitting every week, no technical instruction, probably bad tennis lesson. Unless it's just sparring or something. You know, there should probably be a healthy balance, and it depends on the player, it depends on the stage of development, what the kid is working on or what the adult is working on. But if it's too much of just, if it's all live ball or it's all drills, that's not a good sign. Probably a bad tennis lesson. Remember, a bad tennis lesson means your player or yourself, you're not improving optimally. You might be getting a little bit better, but not as fast as you could. I think the best coaching, a good tennis lesson, gets someone better faster. What's up, amigo? Getting some waves and hellos here. Good to see you. Sorry we haven't been publishing the show that much. It's been, hey, you know, it's a pandemic. But at least we're going, episode 53, you know, slow and steady wins the race when things are starting to get a little bit better back to normal. When things are, you know, getting better, we're going to ramp up the show even more. And I think increase the production quality too, get some new cameras and microphones, and you know, I may hire a full-time technology person to help me. Right now, this is just me in my car sharing some knowledge with you guys. But bad tennis lesson. So sometimes coaches are only tactical. Like, they're really proud of it. Like, I don't teach technique. I don't do that. Okay. Well, that's good. Unless you need some technical help. So that could be a bad tennis lesson. Not always. Some coaches are really proud that they're technicians. They only do technique. No, we don't play. We do tactics. That's bullshit. You know, tactics. We don't do tactics. We don't do that kind of stuff. That's probably bad tennis lesson. Be careful. Depends on what you need or what your kid needs. If you need a lot of technical work and the coach is very, very technical, it's going to be good for a while, but at some point it's going to hold you back. If the coach is not able to have a mix, you know, to offer a mix, you know, it's great when a coach has range, when a coach can work on technique, but also take a step back, bigger picture, develop the game style, develop the tactical patterns, that kind of thing. Both. So if you're stuck with one particular type of coach or another, it's probably a bad tennis lesson. If your coach is out of shape, I don't want to say always a bad tennis lesson, but there's something, it's probably bad. I think good coaches, they're role models. They maintain their condition. They set a good physical example for the player. It means they stay in shape, basically. Then that means they can hit with the player. If a coach has got a big pot belly, clear that they don't take care of themselves, there are probably some exceptions to that, but in general, it's probably going to be a bad tennis lesson. Watch out for that. Find a coach who's fit, takes care of themselves. That means they can hit better too, if they make sure they're a good player. Coaches who are, well, it runs again. Bad tennis lesson. You have young coaches who have no certification. He's an excellent player, but he has no coaching credentials. And what I mean by coaching is continuing education, biomechanics training, exercise science training, coaching certifications. There are different levels of certifications, In the U.S., probably the highest one is the USDA High Performance Coaching Program, that you take several layers, several stages to get to that point. Watch out for that tennis lesson, And on the other hand, there are guys that only have like certifications, a whole list of certifications, page after page of this and that. Sometimes that's a flag. Could be a bad tennis lesson. It's all like theoretical knowledge. They don't know what to do with squat. Make sure you have a nice, healthy, you're looking for a healthy balance, playing capability, and background. Yeah, I'm sorry, we're mobile today, so I'm hoping that the show gets recorded well. I'm sorry, Chris. But let me see if the connection improves. I hope it does. I hope we don't lose the broadcast. You have to be. Sometimes with a young coach, you get someone very passionate, and it's great, but they still need to learn things. And very old coaches have a problem. Can't get that tennis lesson. If some ways they're not up to date on the latest mechanics or technique, things like that. Sort of red flags on tennis lessons. Okay, let's talk quickly. I don't know how good our connection is. I'm sorry, guys. We're mobile. Let's talk about bad. To round out the bad days, it's too negative a show. No, because I've done many shows on like good tennis lessons and what things are better. Good, a bad tennis. Let's talk about tennis camps, like group lessons. Bad tennis. What's a bad? You go somewhere. How do you know it's a bad camp for your kid or for yourself? I had a couple ideas. If the camp is not around, like he's never to be found, maybe he's in the office or God knows where, that's usually a bad tennis camp. It's going to be bad. The main guy, the guru, should be on the court a lot, frequently, or have eyes on the court from his office or from wherever he's at. He should be working with players. The best coach there, the head honcho involved with the players, so that either as a coach or walking around and giving advice, and then also overseeing all the coaches who are working for him. If the head guy is sort of in and out, you don't get the sense that that person's really engaged with all the players and the staff and the coach. That is definite red flag. It's going to be a bad camp or bad academy. Another sign of a bad camp or academy is the fitness. Is the fitness just tack on at the end? Like, is it serious? Do they have a professional trainer, someone really good, someone who has an exercise science background, running the fitness, or who is running the fitness? Do they have engaging the play? Are they knowledgeable? Do they have certifications? And is the fitness practical? Is the fitness focused? Is it is it appropriate for tennis players? Is it geared towards tennis players? How serious is fitness? You want a sense that fitness is taken seriously. And also on the injury prevention side, is there a serious injury prevention program? It's probably if it's not in place, it's probably a bad tennis camp, probably a bad academy. So there's lots of summer camps that I see where the physical training, the strength and conditioning, the fitness training is really a joke or non-existent, and I think that makes for a bad player development, bad tennis camp, bad academy. Look for how many players are in the camp. We talked about this at the onset of the show. My academy, we take maybe 30. For me, that's a lot. It feels like too much, but I can handle it. I get to know all the kids, and I'm on the court. Like, I'm not, like I said, I'm the director, I'm the head coach. I'm there every day working with players. I'm not off doing who knows what. If the camp is really big, it's probably a bad tennis camp. It's just because if you ever run camps or ever run an academy, you have to understand it's so stressful. It's so hard to keep track of all those players. Very hard to give everyone the personal attention that they need. Imagine trying to organize 100 or 200 or more players. Crazy. What's up, Shamsuddin? He says, "Hi, Chris. What's up, buddy? Thanks for joining the program." So numbers. You have the total numbers and you have the ratio, or the ratio, as they say in Spain. So the total number it's probably important. You're probably better off with something medium or small. Sometimes too small is not good. If you only have a handful of players and then there's no healthy competition, that could be bad too. But not too big, not too small. And then the ratio in Spain, and what we do in my camp, is 2 players per court and coach. So that means every kid's getting a semi-private lesson. That's unbelievable when you think about it. I don't know many camps that do that. Even a lot of the programs in Spain don't do that in the summer. They do it during the annual program, but some of them do. But I first learned that in Spain. 2 players per court, 2 players per coach. So every lesson is a semi-private lesson. That virtually guarantees that you're going to get a pretty good lesson or a pretty good session. It's not going to be bad. Now, when you put 4 players on a court, 3 can be a good compromise, but when you put 4, God forbid, 5 or 6 players on a court, forget about it, as they say. It's going to be a bad session, bad lesson, bad camp. There's just no way around it. And when you combine that with the staffing, so here's the other thing with the camp, make sure that who is coaching your kid. Maybe there's a big name at the top, but they're never around, or they're only working with the top juniors. You never see that person. That person never interacts or engages with your kid. That's a sign of a bad tennis camp. And who are the staff coaches? Are they just college kids? Have they had any training? Sometimes you could have college kids, but they have good training, they have good oversight, good management. That's what I try to do. But a lot of times you'll see coaches, maybe they're low-level college, but they don't have a lot of experience. Head honcho, the guru, is he watching his coaches like a hawk and making sure they're doing good stuff? Or you have some young coach just feeding balls to a group of 4, 5, 6 kids who doesn't have that oversight, is not getting mentoring, is not being watched. That's a sign of a bad camp. You take a less experienced coach and you give them 6 kids or 5 kids or even 4 kids, chances of a bad tennis session are pretty high. Even for someone like me, very experienced coach, professional coach, I don't like having 4 kids on a court. It's hard. It's a lot to manage. It's hard to give each player in that group some individual time and individual focus. I can do it. I can do a great session with 4, 5, or 6 players, but it's not as good as it could be with 2 or 3 max. And that's at my level as a coach. So you just imagine for the young guys and girls just getting out there, learning how to teach, and getting started. You throw them with 4 difficult kids or 4 adults or 5 or 6, and forget it. It's not going to be a high quality session, and every session that goes by like that is not going to be very good. And you're going to end up with player development that's not as good, not slower player development. It's not going to be optimal player development. Watch out for that. Watch out for too many kids per court. Watch out for too many kids in the camp. Watch out for inexperienced coaches without oversight. The best academies, the manager, the lead coaches, the senior coaches, the head coaches are involved, and they're watching their coaches work. Not only so the kids get a better session, so it's not a bad lesson or session, but also so that the coaches can develop themselves. Those lead coaches are trying to mentor the players and the coaches. The coaches can get feedback and learn and become better coaches. That's important. Look for that as a parent. Just kind of to wrap up, and I hope we didn't have too many disconnections on the show. Unfortunately, I'm mobile. Look for the players. There should be nice, healthy mix of players. Like healthy nutrition. If you look at your plate, it shouldn't be all meat or all potatoes or all protein, all carbs. You should have a nice balance of food groups. A healthy nutrition. And for players, they need that. They need a healthy nutrition. They need to have good players to spar with, good players to practice with, and also friends. The vibe has to be good at the camp or an academy. Your kid, or if you're going to as an adult, if there are difficult interpersonal battles, you have difficult personalities, that can create a very bad camp environment. So the personalities are important, and the playing level. It's important that your kid is challenged and is around the kids who are serious and pushing hard. If the camp has no players who are competitive with your kid, that's not going to be good for them, right? And if your kid is in a difficult interpersonal battle with some other kid or kids, that's going to detract from the lesson. It's going to make for a bad lesson or a bad session. It's going to make for a bad camp experience. So watch out for that too. How are the players managed? Do they have a nice mix of players for you or your kid? These are some of the basics of what to look for in a good camp, and what to look out for. What are some of the red flags? I guess that's what those red flags. Little things that not always the case, but from my own what I see is bad. on the program, middle of the day, on a Wednesday. I'm going to get this up, and I will see you guys on the next program. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for your likes and for your suggestions, comments. I will, if you have some ideas for upcoming shows, let me know. So sometimes I do publish the show, produce the show a little bit less in the summer. May take a little summer break, but as things get back online in August, September, October, we'll start to get rolling again with more programs. There's a lot of content going back over the last 2 years on the podcast and the show. So if you're jonesing for my voice and my opinion on things, check some of the older podcasts and shows. A lot of good stuff, a lot of great shows that we've done in the last couple of years. Check that out. If you are looking for camp, come on. We are almost maxed out with our player count, but we got a little space